People often only see the facade of success, but behind it there is a lot of pain, disappointment, and darkness. The shocking, unfiltered stories of rock stars not neatly packaged. I hope you can face the truth here in this memoir. He secretly went into his mother's room. Various cosmetics were neatly arranged in front of the dresser. He took out the most glamorous dress from the closet and put it on. Sitting in front of the dresser, he carefully applied lipstick to his lips. He imagined what it would be like to walk outside looking like this. While checking his made-up face from different angles in the mirror, suddenly, the door flung open. It was his father. With a gruff tone, his father rushed in and grabbed his arm, dragging him away. He was pulled down to the basement without a chance to explain himself. His brothers and sisters shivered in fear, looking around nervously. His father detested him dressing up femininely. He was afraid that his father might find out his friends made fun of his feminine gait. He wanted to receive praise from his parents like when he sang in the church choir, but they did not understand his desire to look pretty. One day, as he hummed along to a song on TV, his mother turned off the TV. She said rhythm and blues was the devil's music. Was it because of his taste of wearing women's clothes? At age 15, he was eventually kicked out of home. His name is Richard. His skinny, frail stature led his family to call him Lil Richard. With nowhere to go, Lil Richard joined a troupe, traveling around the country dancing and singing. He won an audition on a radio program and even released R&B songs, but gained no attention. In 1954, Lil Richard gave up his dream of becoming a singer and returned home. During the day, he worked as a dishwasher at a restaurant. At night, he cross-dressed and went clubbing, applying lipstick. One day, Specialty Records was impressed by Lil Richard's demo tape and offered him a chance to record. It was a golden opportunity to change his destiny. He brought the song he had written while working as a janitor at a bus stop. But the recording did not go as he had imagined. As the recording was not progressing as desired, even after multiple takes, the expressions of the record company people began to sour. Frustrated and stressed by all the nagging, Lil Richard eventually yelled out randomly during the song. It was what he would yell out instead of telling his boss to stop when the boss brought a huge pile of dirty dishes while he was washing dishes. But the songwriter, Dorothy Labastri, decided not to dismiss it as a blooper and took it seriously, saving the recording because it was very fresh and novel. And so Lil Richard debuted his name literally as Little Richard. And surprisingly, the song Tutti Frutti with his shouts became a huge hit, charting at number 2 on R&B and number 17 on pop. Following that in 1956, with Long Tall Sally, Little Richard topped the Billboard best-selling rhythm and blues chart. Female fans would throw their underwear on stage during shows, and concerts had to be halted to prevent fans from storming the stage. Thanks to his immense popularity, Little Richard became a black artist loved by whites as well as blacks. Despite racially segregated entrances, his fame allowed audiences of both races to enter the same venue. But contrary to his success, Little Richard had bizarre hobbies. Little Richard would take his girlfriend out and watch other guys get intimate with her in the backseat of his car. He was eventually arrested for sexual misconduct, jailed for 3 days, and his shows were temporarily banned in that area. After breaking up with him, his girlfriend revealed that he had exploited her to buy food from white-only fast food joints that he couldn't enter due to his skin color. In 1957, Little Richard boarded a plane for an Australia tour. When the plane was experiencing heavy turbulence, Little Richard saw the glowing red airplane engine out the window. It appeared as if angels were holding onto the engine, helping the flight. Richard felt spiritual strength from that vision. During the Australia tour one day, Little Richard suddenly had a vision of pillars of fire shooting up into the sky, foretelling the apocalypse, and received a revelation from God to repent. After that event, he abruptly announced ceasing his tour in Australia. When little Richard returned to the US earlier than planned, he was shocked to hear news that the plane he was supposed to take had crashed into the Pacific Ocean. He believed it was God's will saving him, but later, it was discovered those fiery pillars were actually the Soviet satellite Sputnik 1. Sputnik 1, the first human-made object to orbit Earth for 92 days, burned up re-entering the atmosphere, which little Richard had mistaken as a spiritual vision. Absorbed in religion, little Richard began studying theology at Oakwood College in Alabama. But he was expelled when a male student's parents found out little Richard had shown the student his nude body. Little Richard then condemned drugs, homosexuality, and rock music's harm, and converted to become a gospel singer, traveling the world preaching. He denounced rock and roll as the devil's music and started singing gospel. But it was later revealed he had converted for financial reasons. Despite his label earning millions from him, they had secretly reduced the royalties little Richard received for his records. During a gospel tour in England in 1962, when the opening show was delayed, little Richard only performed gospel songs instead of his hits and faced harsh booing from fans expecting his rock and roll hits. Little Richard witnessed guest gospel singer Sam Cooke received an enthusiastic welcome and successfully performed. Feeling competitive, at the next show little Richard sang his hit Long Tall Sally, inciting a frenzied reaction from the crowd. This prompted him to suddenly renounce being a preacher and gospel and return to rock music. Little Richard started heavily drinking alcohol and smoking tobacco and marijuana, eventually getting addicted to cocaine, PCP, and heroin, spending $1,000 a day on drugs. Once, a longtime friend threatened to kill little Richard with a gun for not repaying drug debts, deeply wounding him emotionally. Combined with the shock of his brother's death by heart attack and his beloved nephew murdering two friends with a gun, these traumatic experiences led little Richard to quit rock and roll, return to religion, record gospel albums, and continue his ministry. But then he would flip back to rock music, act in movies, and suddenly convert to Judaism, continuing his fickle life. In 1986, little Richard was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. In 2020, little Richard passed away at age 87. Little Richard. His influence on music was enormous. He pioneered not just rock music, but soul, funk, R&B, and even hip-hop, shaping many popular music genres. But his eccentric, bizarre tastes and scandalous private life, provoking backlash that drove him to be excessively religious, were behaviors difficult for ordinary people to understand. Does success only come to eccentric people? Or does success make people eccentric? Little Richard lived an inscrutable life. Here in this memoir, we try to unpack his complicated life.